Y.F.M got the lens on go.
Myself and this sexy man here, my husband, Mr. Derek Young. Coming up on our 24th wedding anniversary. That's a whole other thing. And so the biggest thing for Mahogany Books, when we created Mahogany Books about almost 19 years ago, the whole impetus was how do we make Black books accessible? This was before all the book banning got all hyped up. People have been trying to ban our history since the beginning. And so Mahogany Books was created to make our books accessible no matter where you live. I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I grew up about a mile or so from Black Wall Street, and when I tell you I never knew Black Wall Street was there because they never talked about it in my school. Never knew it was a mile from my home until I got to college. And if I had known that so many innovators and trailblazers and entrepreneurs were a mile from my home, I already know how much more bolder, how much more confident I'd be because I could see somebody who had done something that I had aspired to do. But first, I'm thrilled to introduce our conversation host this evening. Mahogany Books is so honored to welcome professor, award-winning author, producer, activist, Dr. Ilyasah Shabazz. She is Malcolm X's daughter, and she is here tonight to have a conversation. Yes! Please help me welcome the amazing Dr. Ilyasah Shabazz. So attorney Ben Crump is listed among the most influential people of 2021 by Time 100, Ebony Magazine's Power 100 Most Influential African Americans. He's also the National Trial Lawyers Top 100 Lawyer and the 2014 NNPA Newsmaker of the Year. He is often referred to as Black America's Attorney General. We know. Through a steadfast dedication to justice and service, renowned civil rights and personal injury attorney Crump has established himself as one of the nation's foremost lawyers and advocates for social justice. His legal acumen has ensured that those marginalized in American society are protected by their nation's contract with its constituency. He is the founder and principal owner of Ben Crump Law. Y'all, please help me welcome to the stage, Attorney Benjamin Crump.
That's a good song. Good evening.
Okay, you guys are really in for a treat. It is such an honor to be here with Sir Ben Crump, Esquire.
You're very kind, Queen.
All of us to come together, right? That's what it's all about. What if they said there's an African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And it's the only way we're going to win because we are not the minority in the world. So,
we are the majority in the world.
That's right.
Amen.
Amen. I don't know if everyone is aware, but Sir Ben Crump Esquire won an Emmy for his documentary, How to Sue the KKK. And so today we've gathered here because he has a new book, and it is a must read, and it is excellent. Worse Than a Lie. So this is your debut novel. There are many of us who follow you, who appreciate you tremendously, and your ethical, by any means necessary, work ethics, right?
Amen.
And we'd like to know, why did you write this book?
Certainly. And Tasha Cole is also an Emmy winner, so give it up for your Delta sister. A person who helped inspire me, Sabina, people who made documentaries, and this goes into answering your question. We narrated and produced that documentary, How to Sue the Klan, after 5 black women were racially profiled and shot by members of the KKK in 1982 in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And those ordinary black women, after they survived this racial violence, they had the courage and the audacity to say they would not get to have the last word. They will not get to control the narrative. And they sued the Klan. I mean, think about that in 1980s, Deep South Tennessee, the courage and the audacity. And they gave us the blueprint of how you stand up against bigotry and oppression and racial profiling, racial violence, and just outright evil. And I believe that precedent was very relevant in 1982, and I think it's just as relevant now, today in 2026, that we have to have the audacity to speak truth to power, and we have to have the audacity to create narratives that inspire our next generation of social justice warriors and civil rights lawyers, because now more than ever. And so, in that same vein is why I wrote Worse Than a Lie, the first in the Boley Cooper novel series. My personal hero, Thurgood Marshall, once said that most people will never know what happens inside of a courtroom when you're fighting for justice for marginalized people. So he said he was intentional in writing his legal memorandums of law and his pleadings to be very enticing and very engaging, so that people could be educated when they read about Brown versus Boyd, when they read about all his other important historical cases. And so when I said to myself, Ilyasah, what could be more engaging than a legal thriller to entice people and educate people and empower people? I mean, I've read all these books by John Grisham, the Rainmaker, Michael Colley, the Lincoln Lawyer, obviously the great Perry Mason books that were written in the 20s and the 30s. But all of those books had these superhero lawyers, but none of them had a superhero lawyer that looked like many of us in this room. And I said, I'm going to change that. And thank God people have received it so warmly, and the reviews have been really encouraging that this is a superhero trial lawyer series that has a different kind of flavor, because it's so representative of a community that you don't read about in those other books. These diverse people also exhibited in the brilliance in and out of the courtroom, the resources, the efforts to be able to beat a broken system. And that's why I think people are cheering for this new Boley Cooper series so much, because just like To Kill a Mockingbird with Harper Lee back 80 years ago, inspire young people to want to go and use the law as an instrument for good rather than a weapon of oppression. I pray Worse Than a Lie will do the same.
All right, that was answering like 3 of the questions that I had. So I'm gonna have to like really jump ahead of this brother. Okay, here's one.
That's gonna block them out.
Why was it important for you to contrast the great joy of President Barack Obama's election with the tragedy of Hollis? Yes.
So, I know by next week when I do the book signings, everybody will know everything about the book. But since this is the first night at the historic Mahogany Bookstore, I can't say that enough. The first book signing will be at Barnes & Noble and others, but it was important to be at this Black-owned bookstore today, to do the first one.
And big up to Romanda, of course.
Yeah, can't say it enough, Romanda and Brianna and all of you for making sure as they try to get rid of Black literature, we say not on our watch. So the book is about Hollis Montrose, this Black police officer who on the night of the historic election in 2008 was shot by 4 white police officers 10 times, and he survived. But then, just like we see happening in reality so many times, even though they had video, they tried to oppress the truth. And they then charged the Black police officer with attempted murder and imprisoned him even though he couldn't walk and was paralyzed, because the system is one that takes the police narrative as the gospel, and we have to challenge that system every time. And we see life in many ways imitating art with Worse Than a Lie. Because Sabina, as I talked to you earlier, Sabina's with ABC News, Alex Peretti in Minneapolis also was shot 10 times. And when you read the book, you'll see these 4 officers around him, and they all claim he had a gun, even though he had a permit to carry it. And they all claim they felt in fear of their life when they started discharging their weapons. And even though you had a young lady video it with her cell phone, they came up with all kind of technical reasons why you shouldn't believe your lying eyes. Don't that sound familiar with the authorities in Minneapolis? And so enters this country lawyer named Boley Cooper and his team of social justice warriors that involve a lot of people from our community, returning citizens, people who were from Spanish-speaking countries, and they all come together to help Boley Cooper to beat this broken system. And early on, Attorney Boley Cooper realizes that to beat this broken system is going to take more than just the truth. So that's the background for the book when he's fighting against the Chicago machine, one that's very similar to what we saw in Louisville with Breonna Taylor, with Houston with Sandra Bland, with Sanford, Florida with Trayvon. I mean, all these things, when the truth is right there in our face, they say, you still don't get justice. And so it was intentional, to answer your question, Ilyasah. I intentionally wanted to create this allegory for the reader using, these symbolic characters and events and settings, like the election of the first black president of the United States, where people were saying that there wouldn't be a need for civil rights anymore because now we're in a post-racial America. And even in the chapter before Bowley is brought into the case, he and his wife were talking, and he said he was on an airplane when they announced the results of the election. And a white gentleman on the plane said to him, "Look like you're gonna have to find a new career, because there ain't gonna be no need for civil rights anymore. Y'all just elected a black president." So what I was trying to do very intentionally is foreshadowing, like what happened when we elected Barack Obama, this great moment of hope and promise for America, just opposed with the pushback, a lot that we're seeing today. And I think a lot of the reviews are picking up on that. And even in the trial scenes in the courtroom, they all talk about this election. And we're not trying to be preachy, we're just talking about how people thought America was going to be after the election of President Obama, and the reality of what America was after the election of President Obama. Now, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but many people thought that there wasn't going to be a need for us. There wasn't going to be any more police brutality or discrimination and racism. But my Lord, we know that wasn't true. So that's what this book talks about, and it talks about, Ilyasah, how we're able to overcome it despite all the pushback to our progress.
Amen. So it sounds like the moral
arc of the universe is long,
Yes.
long, but it bends towards justice.
That's right.
And we have to help bend it.
That's right.
And that's what Bowley Cooper and his ragtag team do in every book.
Any resemblance to the initials BC?
Well,
Okay, all right.
some similarities.
Okay. So, Worse Than a Lie was 5 years in the making for you, all the while serving the people who need you the most. What was the process like for you, and what was that impact on your family?
Well, now, Ilyasah, writing a book, you've written several, so, it is a process. And for me, it was therapeutic. Because you got to remember what was happening 5 years ago. We were in the throes of the pandemic, and when everything was shut down in America, seems like itself, racism and police brutality. I mean, we had the killing of Breonna Taylor, of Ahmaud Arbery, and George Floyd. So we were working on those cases, and obviously, if you're a human being and you see George Floyd video, it has an emotional, psychological effect on you, just if you're a human being. And if you see Breonna Taylor's, those photographs of her laying in that hallway with 8 bullet holes in her body and her nightgown, it has an effect on you. So it was therapeutic to write about a story where you understood all the conflicts that come with not just the tragedy of unnecessary, unjustifiable, and unconstitutional killings of innocent people, mostly marginalized people of color, but trying to create a narrative where people could be educated about what happens in the aftermath. You see all this stuff going on where we're pushing the narrative in the court of public opinion while we're fighting against intellectual justification of discrimination every day in the court of law. And so we kind of, Tasha, tell the story through these characters. And then you try to create narratives that try to turn out all the excuses for how they justify killing us. I mean, and when you get in the trial scene, and I don't want to give it away, but you know, Hollis is on that stand and they are assassinating his character, even though you couldn't find a person that was a better citizen. And that was intentionally, Ilyasah, because every time they kill us, what do? They try to assassinate our character. And if you, my God, if you were ever arrested or you're a convicted felon, or if you are a person undocumented, it's almost if they say, oh, it doesn't matter what we do to you because you don't matter. So we went to find somebody who was the best citizen, a former police officer, a person in the community, wasn't tainted in any way. But it didn't matter because they never saw him. They saw what they projected on him. And so that night, after their blood was boiling, because a black president had been elected, and it's even in the lines where we talk about them saying, when Hollis is trying to plead this case that, you know, he's a police and everything, they say, shut up, boy. We're in control here. It doesn't matter if that boy is in the White House. And you try to paint that picture, but Hollis is such a good person. How could you treat him like this? And it shouldn't matter whether he was a convicted felon or an undocumented immigrant. He's a human being. And that's what I was trying to paint this picture. And then see, even the best of us, they still try to assassinate the character to protect the institution. And so that's what Foley is fighting. He's fighting the institutions that make up the broken system. And it gets very entertaining because you got them going against the police, and I mean, it's one of those situations when you think about all great legal thrillers, you're like, man, how they gonna pull this out? And at the very last hour, you see the brilliance that many of the National Bar Association lawyers, these lawyers like Thurgood Marshall and Johnny Cochran and Constant Baker Motley, what they had to do to win cases with juries that didn't have the same lifestyle or life experiences, none of the cultural understandings, but what they had to do to be able to convince them that the police were wrong, that the system was wrong, that America was wrong. And that's what you get in this first book, Worse Than a Lie. So hopefully I answered your question. That's why I wanted to be intentional about President Obama's election.
I see. And so it sounds like it's fictional. Did you guys think it was a true book? Did you think it was biographical? Have you read it yet?
Don't come out till tomorrow.
Okay.
Y'all getting the book before it come out.
So it sounds like this is how you cope, because I was going to ask you, how do you cope with the emotional toll that your career brings, right? Because we all see you with all of this grace, you know, your presence, right, precedes you, right? How are you able to be graceful and kind and thoughtful and loving? Because we know everybody needs Ben Crump.
You're very kind, Ilyasah. And I see Jay Wonder Gordon, all my colleagues all here. Good to see you, brother. Well, a lot of it comes from reading about Thurgood Marshall, when he talked about you have to keep your eyes on the prize. He said you got to stay focused because obviously it gets to you. I still think about Trayvon Martin every day. I think about Mike Brown. You think about Pamela Turner and Botham Jean and Terrence Crutcher and Sandra Bland and Stephon Clark and Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Andre Hill. I mean, you think about the list just goes on and on and on. But in every one of those situations, I always had Thurgood in my mind saying, hey, you got to keep it together because everybody around you are losing it and emotional because it's the worst day of their life. To lose a child, to lose a loved one, to lose a spouse. It's the worst day of their life. So you're trying to keep it together and keep your eyes on the prize to help them try to make sense out of something that makes no sense at all. I mean, you don't even want to put yourself in the shoes of Sabrina Fulton, Trayvon's mother, or, Mike Brown Sr., Leslie McSpadden, and them. Because it's too real for so many people in this room. And so what I always do is Thurgood said, keep your eyes on the prize, stay focused, because what you're trying to do is prevent future lynchings, as many as you can. Because, he was dealing when they was hanging us up by trees and castrating us and everything. So every fight was trying to prevent that. I'm trying to prevent these modern day lynchings. Like Tyree Nichols, when the video is there and we still fighting for justice. And so it's that. And then I see Martin Mayhew, one of my pro-fights, the Omegas, you learn from everybody, perseverance. And perseverance is so critical. Like you said, Ilyasah, the moral arc of the universe is long. I mean, you fighting these cases. We now been at it 4 years on your father's case, and I mean, you just keep fighting. It never is going to be easy when you're fighting for justice for the least of these, as my grandmother said. But it's like I said in the book, in the first page, in the dedication, when you're seeking to fight for truth and justice, it is not for the faint of heart. You got to be willing. And boldly, I mean, they coming for him. I mean, everybody coming from here. The police union, the prosecutor, and the judge. His partners are saying, maybe we should just let it go. But, like a true believer, they just so focused on saying, no, it matters. If we don't fight for Hollis, then why do we have the law degree? We might as well give it back. And that's an oath to our ancestors. And so that's what it's about. It's art imitating life, life imitating art. You might see some similarities between Bo Lee Cooper and Ben Crump. Maybe, a little bit.
So with this is Black History Month, and with the constant erasure of our history, forget about books, but just our history, why is it critical for these young people to read your book?
Yeah, and it's what I said, you're trying to get them ready for, if you gonna be a social justice warrior and a civil rights lawyer, you understand from day one, it's not for the faint of heart. It ain't gonna be easy. If you scared, say you scared. And get out of the way so people who ain't scared can come on and go fight for our people. Fight for the Constitution. Fight against ICE and, the assault on the Constitution. And so that's what hopefully young people are inspired to say, that, no matter how much the cards are stacked against us, we still believe we can get justice as long as we're willing to fight for it. no matter how much they come for you. It's about, and there's some beautiful poetry in the book, I think, poetic times where at their lowest lows, there's always somebody there to say, we believe in you, Bo, keep fighting. And when they get to talking, I know I won't give it away, but even the title, you know, my worse than a lie, my grandmother, when I was a little boy, my grandmother kept us a lot because, you know, your mama was working a lot. And I always remember my grandmother saying that, what's worse than a lie? To tell the truth and have nobody believe you. And so you see in this book, it gets so much worse when you're in a court of law and you're a person of color trying to argue your truth, and they just keep slamming the door in your face. And I thought, Ilyasah, and all the lawyers will understand this. How many times our sisters and brothers have had to go in courtrooms and lie on themselves and take these trumped up plea deals because they knew if they did not take the plea deal and they went to court, the very real likelihood was they were going to spend decades in prison for a crime they didn't commit. And that's worse than a lie.
This is the last question, Blue Monday. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett she said, every once in a while, a book like To Kill a Mockingbird is written, and it inspires a generation of civil rights attorneys. And she said that your book, Ben, is that book for this generation. What challenges can we expect for the next generation of civil rights attorneys?
Oh man, we're seeing it play out daily. I mean, the state of civil rights in America today is one I think that we haven't seen, and many of us haven't seen in our lifetime. Maybe our parents saw it under the George Wallaces and those type of people, but now what we're seeing, Tasha, coming from the highest positions in authority, Oshawa, I'm looking at people who've been working inside White Houses and so forth, and you see how they are using the law as a weapon for oppression every single day. I mean, every single day. When you look at the actions of ICE, I mean, you think about what we're seeing play out in places like Chicago with ICE and Minneapolis and Memphis, Tennessee. You have ICE agents assaulting the Constitution on every level, our most basic principles of the Constitution. They're attacking the First Amendment, right to free speech and freedom of assembly and freedom of the press. You know, they just arrested Don Lemon and Georgia Fort and so forth. Then you see them assault the Second Amendment with the killing of Alex Peretti. What did they say? Well, he had a gun, even though he was licensed and so forth. They shot him, and they just completely forgot about Kyle Rittenhouse, talking about, well, you shouldn't bring a gun to a protest. He took an assault weapon to a protest. I mean, and then the Fourth Amendment, oh my God, the right to be protected against unlawful searches and seizures. I mean, they're kicking in people's doors without any warrants, without any probable cause. I mean, just racial profiling. I mean, kicking in people's car windows, snatching them out. I mean, it's like you've never seen an assault like this on the Fourth Amendment. Then the Fifth Amendment, a right to due process of the law. All the lawyers understand that one of our most cherished legal rights in America is that we are innocent until proven guilty. Not with this ICE. I mean, you are guilty until you can prove your innocence, because the Supreme Court has said they're okay with racial profiling. I mean, and it's just heartbreaking to watch all these constitutional rights that have been hard fought for just being erased by this administration. The Sixth Amendment right to counsel. I mean, you got people in detention facilities that their lawyers are trying to get in to have consultation with them, and they won't even let the lawyers in. They're making them have to speak for themselves. And then the worst of all, Ilyasah, the worst of all is the assault on the Eighth Amendment right against cruel and unusual punishment. I mean, you got people in these ICE detention facilities who need their medicines to survive, to live, their insulin. They need their, heart medicine and so forth, and they're not getting it. And people are dying, and nobody's holding this administration accountable. And so that's the state of civil rights in America today. Now more than ever, we got to have young people to be courageous, like we haven't seen. Billy Murphy, my good friend, 84 years young, he always tells me, and I've said this on prior occasion, he said, Ben, the reason I get so happy when I see you on the news and so forth is I don't care what the case is. He said, you're going to speak truth to power. He said, understand, Brother Crump. He said, we got enough intelligent African Americans in our society today. He said, we got enough articulate African Americans in society today. He said, what we seem to lack is enough African Americans who got the courage to speak truth to power when they got a seat at the table, when they are in the room, when they can give a voice to those who will never have a voice inside those rooms. Instead of speaking up for us, they rather play it safe. And he said that's the real tragedy. So many people your father gave his life for this generation to be able to have all these opportunities at these great educations and these great jobs and these great resources in the belief that they will fight for those of us who didn't get those opportunities. I mean, the sacrifices of our ancestors in slavery in the cotton fields, being beaten and kidnapped and raped and lynched, just with the dream that our children and their children will have a better opportunity than us. So they sacrificed. During the civil rights era, you had so many of our mothers and fathers sacrificing, getting up to catch the early bus to go and take care of other people's families, nurse other people's children, cook dinner for other people while their children had to be home, trying to figure it out with grandma and auntie and their cousins, because they were sacrificing, because they said we were going to have it better. We were going to be able to make a difference for those of us who wouldn't be as fortunate as us to get a semblance of the American dream. And that those people, those talented 10th, were going to fight for us. And so it's just a shame before God if they get a seat at the table and they don't live up to the sacrifices of our ancestors. And that's what we expect from this generation of civil rights lawyers.
Well, I want to say so many things, but I'm going to say, you guys, let's give it up for Ben Crump.
testimony in and of itself. And she knows, good friends with my wife, Janae. But I say this, Leslie, as I say to everybody who has children, remind our children that they are beautiful as they are, they are intelligent, that they are just as capable and able and resourceful as anybody else in the world, not just America, because a big part of it, we have to think globally. It's not enough for us to think nationally anymore. We have to connect with the diaspora, people of African descent all around the world. And like Ilyasah said, they want to try to say we're the minorities. No. In the world, we're the majority. People of color are the majority. And so you have to tell your children that, you know, you have the DNA running through your veins from the greatest kings and queens ever known on this earth. I mean, algebra, science, astrology, all those things were invented by your ancestors, despite what they try to say. And most importantly, Leslie, what you got to tell your son and daughter every chance you get is you are the best that we have to offer for the future. You are the brightest, the most gifted, the most articulate. I mean, you got to keep pouring in them over and over every day continuously, because when they leave out your house, this society is going to tell them differently. And Cliff Jones and us were talking, Cliff, my investigator, he said something one time, I'm quoting him, so I'm not swearing. He said, you can have 99 data boys, 99 good job, but it takes one just derogatory, demeaning statement by somebody to them who's in authority, like a teacher or a counselor or something, that can break their spirits. I know Malcolm X, remember he talked about he wanted to be a lawyer, and his white teacher told him that's not realistic for a Negro child. And he said that broke his spirit. He never wanted to go to school again until he was in prison. And so it's incumbent upon us to build our children up so much that they won't even give any credence, because my mom and daddy told me every day how special I was. So I don't care what you say, America. I don't care what you say, judge. I don't care what you say, police officer. No. We are the best that we have to offer for the future, and we have to say it 100 times a day. Tell our children 100 times how special, how great they are.
YFM got the lens on go.